Okay, thank you for joining me on today's stream. Today's stream is the first one that I'm doing of a lunchtime. So this is me sitting when I should be having my lunch. And instead, I'm going to attempt to do some open source work that it's been on my card for a little while. So it's all about the continuation of this Visual Studio Code extension that I'm creating. It's an extension that I've called, imaginatively called clip-img. The intention of this Visual Studio extension is that I want to continue the documentation or blog post writing workflow that I have, which is I want to be able to grab a screenshot, immediately take that contents of that image, upload it to Azure Blob Storage, because that's where I put everything for my blog and for all my documentation. And then I want to get a URL back that I can immediately put into the Markdown files that I'm creating. So this all comes from the fact that on a Windows machine, I have historically used, I think I still have it installed, I use this application from Rick Strahl called Markdown Monster. It's very good at what it does, and it has this exact workflow that I've just described. It allows me to, it actually goes one step further. It allows me to open my default screenshot utility, which in my case is typically Snagit, to then manipulate that image, take that image from the clipboard and stick it into Azure Blob Storage, and then give me a URL back. Now that's great, unless I've now got a Mac, which I do. So the Mac doesn't run Markdown Monster, so that workflow that I have doesn't work anymore. So I am unashamedly stealing that workflow from Rick, and I'm trying to add it into a Visual Studio Code extension that will do that same work. Now, where we got to on last Monday, or this Monday just passed, so we're at the point now where we have a Visual Studio Code extension where if I have a screenshot, let's go ahead and copy something from, or rather get something into my clipboard using Greenshot. So I'm just going to copy some of this. So, and I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. So I now have that in my clipboard. And where we got to was that in this extension, which is in the extension development host, I can now click this hello world and I can give it a name. This is a test. And then what that will do is it will then take that image from the clipboard, save it to a file in the file system, and then write out a URL. Now, if we can prove that I go back to here and I look at where we're currently putting them out, that's in here. So that's this test.png, that's the image that I just put onto my clipboard, and then we can see it saved it down correctly. So that's where we're at. The next stage is obviously polishing that up and taking the contents of that file or the byte stream, depending on how we finally implement it. We want to take that and put it up to Azure Blob Storage, and then take the URL back from Azure Blob Storage and put it into my file. However, because this is a lunchtime and I haven't got that much time, I probably won't start getting into that. Instead, we'll look at some of the more superfluous stuff that we need to do around this extension and how we're developing it. So the first one is that as a result of the changes that we made last week, or rather on Monday, we added Dependabot into this system. So Dependabot is now running against this repository. So if we look at Dependabot, what Dependabot has done is it has created a couple of pull requests for me. So the way that we set Dependabot up was that we asked Dependabot to look at a package.json file in that repository, and if it found any dependencies that have got a new version published, then it tells me about it via pull request. So if I go in here now and look at these pull requests, what we'll see here is that Dependabot is telling me that I need to bump the TS-lint dependency and also the type definitions for Node from And both of these are minor versions, or rather major minor patch versions. So I'm reasonably happy that I can go ahead and take these in without too much trouble. I'm just seeing Kim in the chat room there. Hello, Kim. Glad that you can make it along. So this one is a patch bump, so I'm reasonably happy that I can pull this in without too much concern. So I'm just going to go ahead and review this pull request, and I'm going to get this merged in. So let's just go ahead and do that. Now, what that will probably do is that will probably kick the other pull request and tell it that it needs to be rebased. So that's one of the things that Dependabot does for us. I'm going to change this label here, and I'm going to assign this to the milestone that is 010. So with that merged, then if we go and look at the other pull request, then what might be happening, and it is Dependabot has now identified that I've merged that previous pull request that it created, and it's identified that it can no longer easily merge those two things together. So it's rebasing this PR against the latest head of the branch that's just been merged into, and then it's going to resubmit this pull request by force pushing into this pull request the changes that it makes, which is great because it means those PRs are kept up to date. They're not stale. It's a testimony to Dependabot and how it works for that to work. So if I go ahead and log in here, we'll just see if the builds are running, which they are. So this is the merge that I've just done. So once that one's done, Dependabot, or rather not once it's done, once Dependabot has finished doing the rebase and it repushes or force pushes into that pull request branch, then another CI build will kick off, and then we'll be in a position to merge this PR as well. So one of the other things that I wanted to get added into this repository was the concept of Git Release Manager. Now, interestingly, I've just got a notification to say that something failed on that PR build. So let's just see what happened there. npm install. Why would that have caused a build failure? Interesting. Okay, so let's. Well, this is not where I expected to be doing things today. So git fetch origin, git rebase origin develop. Let's just have a quick look to see where we're at. Wasn't necessarily expecting that build to fail. So we are up to date, everything is there. So let's just do a local build just to see if everything builds successfully locally. So I'm, for those that you don't know, I'm using Cake in this project. So the theory goes that the build that runs locally should also be running, or rather is running on AppVeyor as well at the same time. So if it builds locally, in theory, it should build on AppVeyor as well. So let's just test to see if this is going to work here. And if it doesn't work here, then that explains why it's not working on AppVeyor, and something needs to change. So let's just see what happens. An error occurred. One or more error occurred. Okay, so it fails locally too. Let's dig into this a little bit. Verbosity. Verbosity equals diagnostic. Diagnostic. So what I'm doing here is I'm just changing the way that Cake is executing. So rather than, I'm setting the verbosity to a higher level so that I can get more output from the build and the call to npm, and hopefully that will highlight what could be going wrong, because right now I wasn't necessarily expecting that to break the build. So it is shelling out to npm, and then npm is barfing. Error occurred executing. Okay, so let's run npm directly and see if. Oh, what's this? npm shrink-wrap JSON. Open. Operation rejected. Possible the file is already in use. I have got genuinely no idea what's going on there. This is about the stretch of my npm wonder, and it's, if all else fails, I'm going to delete the node modules folder, and I'm going to put it back together. If anyone in the chat has any other bright suggestions on what could be going on here, then feel free to jump in, because this was unexpected. This was meant to be a simple edition, and I was going to move on to, let's maybe close Visual Studio Code as well. I was going to move on to adding Mergify and adding Git Release Manager into the build process as well. But that's clearly not going to happen just yet. So let's run npm install again. Interesting. So something in that npm modules folder has or is causing a problem. And that will be causing a problem on the build server because, no, I'm not. I thought I might be caching the node modules folder as well on AppVeyor, but I'm not. So why would that be causing a problem on AppVeyor as well? Caching tools. Interesting. Interesting. So there are ways that I can do the equivalent. I know that shouldn't be necessary at all. So on AppVeyor, I thought I might be caching the node modules folder, which would explain why it was also failing in the same way it was locally. But I'm not caching that node modules folder. The only folder that I'm caching is the tools folder. Now, for it to fail on AppVeyor would mean that something else would need. What did I just pull in? It was the type definition, wasn't it? It was the type definition for node. Is it that? No. Is it the version? Is it the fact that AppVeyor doesn't currently have that version of Node? Would that be causing a problem? But then, .11.10. I wonder what version of Node AppVeyor has and whether that's the issue. We can test that quite quickly. So if we go up to here and edit our appveyor.yaml file and add in another step as part of the build, maybe unexpected errors with a successful run. Open URL. So Kim's just sent something in the chat, which is unexpected error messages with a successful run. Sometimes npm commands task will show errors in the build log, but the build will succeed. This can happen with npm CI, where all packages are resolved and installed, but the error pointing back to the build. This is because you're calling the script from PowerShell. To fix this in the shell, mode. Actually, look at the section above that one. So you're saying, oh, sorry. Let's make this a little bit bigger so that we can see it. To fix this in shell mode, you know what, just while we're looking at that, I'm just going to go ahead and, as a sanity check, just to see what version of Node is being installed, being used. So I'll just add a step in here, and we're just going to say Node version. And we can go back to that URL. Back at what Kim was suggesting while that's running. Specific lock errors. You're talking about the lock errors, Kim, is that what you were saying? I didn't see any lock errors necessarily. Oh, hold on, look. Error installing VSCode. Error status code 500. This is maybe completely unrelated. I mean, we can get around that by looking at the. We can go directly to the AppVer image, and oh, it's on a much older version of Node. Look, would that be? No, it can't be. Do we want a specific version of Node installed? So let's do this then. Let's go off on a tangent here, and let's RDP into the AppVer VM so that we can see what's going on. Oh, go away. Really? So let's just go ahead and take this string here and copy that into our AppVer YAML file. That will allow us to RDP into the VM. Now, I think I maybe missed something off the end of that, did I? I did. There's a closing bracket there as well. So let's do that. And go ahead and do something else over here where you won't be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to put the password into the settings so that I can RDP onto the box. I'm going to put that on my other window and create an environment variable with a password. And save that, and then I'm going to run that build. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out what's going on. Because, yeah, that wasn't necessarily what was expected. So what this is going to do is every time you run a build in AppVer, it gives you a brand new VM. And what this little script that I added into the onFinish was, it is going to present me with the RDP credentials, or rather the RDP IP address and port number that this build image is running on. And then I can RDP into it, I can see all the files that have been dropped onto the file system, and I can run the build, or I can get access to the VM as if I were running the build locally. Now you get that for an hour, so AppVer will keep that VM image open for an hour. Any longer than that, it'll automatically terminate. But it's really useful for just this kind of thing, where something strange is going on, to help you identify what's going on. So it's now running that script, and what it's going to output is the credentials that are needed to gain access to that VM. Now, obviously, there is it's not going to output the password, because that would mean that anybody looking at the log in AppVer would be able to get access to the VM. So that's not necessarily something you want, but it uses the password that I put into the environment variables, so you can store that securely, and then just knowing what it is. So I'm going to log into this VM now. I'm going to say yes to that because I trust the certificate. And this gives me an RDP session into that AppVer host machine now. So if I go into the C drive and I look at the projects folder, then in there should be, that's the source code that was git cloned as part of running the build. And this is essentially the files that I have on my file system on the AppVer machine. So if I cd into projects and then look at clip image 1, then in here, if I run npm install, what's going to happen? There we go. Check the installed VSCode version. It could be it's too old. Could be. Can't be that. I don't know if Visual Studio Code itself is installed on this machine. Now, as part of the build script, it's installed the VSCE, which is what's being used to actually build the extension. Although it's happening after the npm install. I wonder. Let's try that then. So let's have a look at. Let's have a look. Where did VSCode go? I closed it. No. This one. One of the let's have a look in here and look at the build.cake. So what it's doing, npm install TypeScript and then install VSCE. Let's try doing things in a different way. So build.ps1 target install VSCE. Node modules VSCode then install. Let's see if this helps. So that's successfully installed VSCE. So now if we go back and run npm install again, see if that doesn't change anything. Failed at the clip img VSCode post install script. This is probably a problem with npm. A complete log of this can be found at there. Oh, okay, let's have a complete log as well. So C users app there. App data is hidden. Nope, I clicked on the wrong one. App there. App data. Roaming. npm cache. Logs. 1226 is this one. Error layer at /echo. I see it have been reported once in the VSCode repo, but suddenly it started to work again for the guy reporting it. Have you got a link to that, Kim? I'll bring that up. Thank you. Copy link to clipboard. Minimize this. Up to Google Chrome. Paste that in. Was it recently that this had an error? This was from 2017. Okay. My build's an app where I can't fail due to 500 response from VSTSDS. Well, that's exactly the problem. The build is here. Note, as is always the way, it was resolved right after I submitted this. Actually, I just saw the same from Travis. So it's just an intermediate thing? Let's just go back to projects here. And let's delete the node modules. And as Kim suggested, let's run cache clean as well. npm cache clean f. I like that. I sure hope you know what you're doing. Sure, I know exactly what I'm doing. npm install. No, I'm not saying it would either, Kim. I'm just belts and braces at this point, just testing everything. Detected VSCode engine version installing VSCode DS request return status code 500, but it works from my machine because from my machine, this is so bizarre. Let's do it one more time. So npm install. Exact same point, and then it worked. Fetching VSTS from blah 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 VSCode DS. So why does that not work from AppVer? So this is me on AppVer. Here's the link that it's trying to use. Oh, it's not going to work, is it? Oh, it did. Well, it did. It's right there. Why is... Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. I have no good explanation for what's going on here. Request return status code 500. Okay, I'm not going to look at this anymore because, I mean, that works. So I'm just going to plow on as though the CI builds are working, and then I'll come back to this. So to finish this off, once you've logged into your AppVer instance over RDP, you can either let it time out, and after an hour it will go away, but I would suggest that you be a good citizen. So you'll find that there's a delete me to continue build.txt file on the desktop. If you go ahead and delete that, that will then trigger this VM to shut down. So rather than leaving it in a hung state, we're essentially finished with it now. So that will then, I can only imagine that the AppVer guys have got some sort of file system watcher running in behind the scenes, and it's looking for that file to get deleted, and then the build will continue at that point. So if we go back over to our build, you'll see that it's now build lock file has been deleted, so it's resuming the build. Okay, so we'll come back to that later, and we'll try and figure out why that's not working. But for now, I'm going to go back to my appver.yaml file, and I'm going to take out that line that I added for getting access to the RDP session, and that'll put it back together. So what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to merge that second pull request. Even though it's got a failed build, I'm happy to pull that in, and yeah, it will be. Let's just hope that it starts working again on AppVer. I may speak to Fyodor and Ilya to try and see what's going on there, see if they've got any ideas. But we'll do that later. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and get this merged. And with that merged, I can do one of the things that I wanted to do. So one of the things that I wanted to do was into this, I wanted to add Git Release Manager. So Git Release Manager is a tool that I use for generating the release notes of a release that I'm putting out. So based on that, I'm actually going to add this one to here and add this one to here. So Git Release Manager works in the sense of looking at a milestone. So I'm quite diligent about always assigning issues to a milestone that I'm currently working on. So for this extension, it's a brand new release, so I'm working towards the 0.10 release of this extension. So any issue that I am working on or I'm building out, I add to the milestone, and then when it's ready, I close it. So what Git Release Manager will then do is it will generate me a set of release notes based on the issues that are closed on that milestone. And it does that quite well out of the box, but there is some configuration that you can apply based on having a YAML file in the root of the repository. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to generate that YAML file. So I'm going to do that using the CI/CD code extension that I have. So this is me downloading my Git Release Manager.yaml file. You can use your own one, obviously, but for me, these are the things that I'm interested in. So I want to, when I'm generating a set of release notes, I want to have release notes added for breaking changes, for features, for bugs, for improvements, for documentation, and for security-related things. So these things here are labels. So anything that has been labeled in the repository with one of these things will be included in the release notes. This one here, though, is saying that any issues that are in this list are excluded from the list. So what I mean by that is all of these pull requests that have come from Dependabot, I've marked them with the build label. So they don't necessarily need to be included in the release notes, but I want to include them in the milestone, so I know that that's when they got released. But I don't necessarily want my release notes to be flooded with just bumping of dependencies. Where I actually do something, I do an improvement, or I have a feature, or there's a breaking change, those are the things that I want to include in the release notes. So this YAML file is going to control that for me. And the other thing that is handled here is that out of the box, Git Release Manager, it's reasonably naive, and it'll when it comes to pluralizing things, it will just simply add an S onto the end of it. So for something like bugs or features or improvements, that works really well. For something like documentation, the plural of that is not documentations. So what this section here is allowing you to do is to control the pluralization of what's written into the release notes. So I'm controlling that again through the documentation and the security labels. I'm controlling what label title is assigned to it. So I'm going to add a issue here, which is to add Git Release Manager config file. I'm going to assign that to me. That's going to be a build label, and that's going to go into this milestone as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. That's going to give me an issue that I can then track. So that's 15. So over here, I can then now add in this file, and I can close that out and make that assigned to this one. I'm just going to say add grm config file. Go ahead and save that. I want to push that, but in order to get that pushed, I'm going to need to fetch what's on origin because I made some changes directly in GitHub. So I can say git rebase on origin develop. And then with that done, I can then push the change that I've just added, which is the addition of the Git Release Manager YAML file. So up on GitHub now, we should have that, which we do. And then if I look at my issue that I created in here, it will then have that assigned to it, which we do. And then I'm happy to close this one out. The other things that I wanted to add in terms of build for this project was there's a few other things in here that I might just do as one issue. So Kim's still on the chat room as well, so I'm going to ask him about this because I never got a chance to ask him about it earlier. So I'm just going to create another issue, which is add other build related files to repo. I'm going to say build, and I'm going to say add it to the milestone as well. So the other ones that I'm interested in are an editor config file. So editor config is a thing that will take the settings that you have applied into that editor config file and bring them through into your IDE that you're currently using. So in my case, my IDE is Visual Studio Code, but it would also work, those settings would also be applied to Visual Studio or Notepad++ or whatever IDE or text editor that you're working in. So through my CI/CD pipeline, CI/CD assets extension, I have what are my default editor.configuration editor config file settings, which is just a file here, and I've also got another one which is my Git attributes file. So Kim had pointed out that I had a inconsistency between the two of these things. So in my Git attributes file, I'm saying that end of line for solution files are CRLF. So that's the Windows line ending. However, in my editor config file, I'm saying that end of line should be CRLFs. But Kim pointed out on another project that for any other file, I should also be specifying in my Git attributes file that it's CRLF. Now, was that, Kim, I know you're in the chat room, was that just an annoyance for you because you happened to notice it? Or did you actually see that being surfaced somewhere which led you to figure out that there was a distinct an ambiguity between the editor config and the Git attributes file? So, random question. No one else in the chat's really going to care about this, but it's something that I do. So, and this is my lunch hour, so I'm going to do what I want to do. So if Kim comes back, yes, it was just an annoyance. So you just happened to notice it. Okay, fine. So what we said was, if I go over to this one, into this one, and look at its editor config file, then what was added, not the editor config file, the Git attributes. The Git attributes file, which is this one, then what was added on was this at the end. If I was running Linux, I would probably have noticed it in a different way, as Git would report the line endings not being correct, and that's where I saw it. So I saw it auto-correcting or making telling me that it was switching it as it was going into the repository, and it would leave it the way it was on the local file system. Hey Matthias, so Matthias has just jumped into the chat room as well. I might ask Matthias if he knows what the problem with AppFair is as well. So for this one though, I'm going to add that into there, and I may need to flow that through to the CI/CD assets editor config file or get attributes file, so it's there by default and I don't have to remember to change it each time. The other one I wanted to add into here was the mergify file. So in here, there is a mergify file. So that controls how I'm going to set up the mergify service to automatically, potentially automatically merge my NAPRs and also tidy up the branches. So I've got that in there, and we'll talk through that in a second. And the other one for CI/CD was for YAM. I haven't got YAM on this repository yet, but it is something that I will look to do. So I'm going to add a YAM file there, and the other one that I need to add is my GitHub files. So GitHub files are here, and it's going to ask me for the project name. So the name of this project is clip img VSCode. So what that's going to do is going to add a .github folder, and in that GitHub folder it's going to have my default code of conduct, contributing file, issue templates, and pull request templates. And the reason it prompted me for a project name was because in at least one of these files, it does a tokenized replace of a token in there with the name of the project you give it. So with all of those things added in, I think that's everything that I typically add to my projects. So I've got a config file for YAM, I've got mergify, git attributes, edit ignore, git release manager, dependabot we've added because it's already running, appver we had, git ignore. I haven't got Travis yet, so I'm not going to set up a Travis build just now. That's something that may come later. So this is going to be assigned to, I can only assume it's going to be 16. Yes, it is. So this is going to be added remaining build files using CI/CD assets VSCode extension. Okay, so yes, no, I didn't want that test.png. That was a little bit silly, wasn't it? Didn't want that test.png in there. Git reset head. That's not gonna work. Where's the tilde in this machine? Git. Strange. Git reset head tilde. Where's the tilde? There it is. I can remove a file from an interactive rebase. Can I? If I can do that, then let's go ahead and do that. I was just going to reset the commit. I can remove an individual file as part of a rebase. I'm waiting for a yes before I hit return. Or remove cache file path, amend head. All of those work, but that's a lot of typing. Git remove cache file path, git commit, because what I was going to do was this. So that will put it back to an uncommitted state. And then I'm just going to remove that one. So I'm going to discard the changes for that test.png. And then I'm back to the point where I don't have a commit, and then I can just add it back in again. So 16 added build files using CI/CD assets VSCode extension. Okay, so this time round I can go ahead with that. I'm going to say yes to that this time. And then I'm doing a git push. Yeah, just git remove commit and rebase. Beautiful. Right, so Matthias is on the chat room as line. So, and there's someone else. Jan might know too. So currently my appver build is broken. I before you guys came onto the chat, I merged a PR which was to bump one of the dependencies, and since I've done that, my appver build is now failing. But it's failing in a completely unrelated. And I've got no real... my build works locally on my machine, but for some reason on AppVeyor it's failing. So I'll let you see the error message that's coming out, and then you can make suggestions as to what's going on. Because then it's getting close to the top of the hour, so we'll have to stop. But while we're waiting for that... Yeah. Oh, it doesn't show it properly on here. But essentially what it's trying to do is it's unable to install this VSCode d.ts. Now, on my local machine, when I run it, it says happily fetching that VSCode d.ts from that URL. But for some reason, that URL on AppVeyor can't be found. Or rather, it's returning a 500 error message. And I've got no idea what's going on there. So any suggestions are welcome from anyone in the chat room about how to fix that, because it's kind of annoying. But we did that, so I can go ahead and get this closed off. So we did that, and same version of node npm. So no, I did. No is the answer. The AppVeyor is running an older version of Node, version 8. I'm running version 10. However, the reason that I'm questioning, I'm not saying I'm not going to do that, Matthias, but the reason I'm hesitant to do that, if I look at the history of this for the pull request, so let's go back up here. The history for this is the one that got merged in. The CI build for the PR worked perfectly. So it successfully downloaded that thing happily. I then merged it, and it's no longer able to find it. So I don't think it's a problem with node versions or npm versions or anything like that. I just think something is wrong with that URL now. But yeah, I don't know how to explain it, because we RDP'd onto the AppVeyor VM, and we were able to view that URL in the browser, but for some reason it didn't come back down. So it's a little strange, I'll say. But yes, I could run... Well, merge could clear cache. Yeah, but it seems to, regardless of what's in the cache, it's requesting that URL, that download URL each time. It's not pulling it from the cache. Every time I run npm install, I see it fetching it from there. And Kim's pointing out that the node modules folder itself isn't cached either on the AppVeyor machine. Oh man, see, this is, you can't quite see it, but on my... So this, what you can see on the stream is a VM, and I'm running a VM on my Windows machine. And on my Windows machine, it's just popped up with a restart to install the newest Windows feature update. I'm going to say, and the choices I've got are pick a time, remind me later, or restart now. I'm going to say remind me later, because I don't want to do that right now. All of this came about because I thought, in order to use the NDI plugin feature on the Skype preview, that I also needed to have the Windows preview, the Windows 10 Insider build on my machine. Turns out that that's not the case. But now I'm in a position where I have the Windows Insider build on my host machine for my streaming, and then every so often it decides that it wants to get an update. I'm going to say remind me later to that, though. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, so where do we get to? So we've still got a failing build. We're at a point where we've got all the build-related stuff in this extension. So where we need to go to next, or what I need to start thinking about next, is how I can get a byte stream or an actual file and upload that into Azure Tables or Azure Blob Storage. So if I go over here and go to the Visual Studio Code Marketplace, or Markdown, that's not really what I wanted. Market. place, then there already is an extension for Azure that handles things like uploading to table storage. So what my intention is to use some of the files in that, because that extension obviously has a lot more stuff. It handles all the edge cases that you could possibly want to when you're uploading a file into Azure Storage. I have one specific thing I want to do, which is just to upload and place it into a specific bucket, and that's it. Potato, I love it. So this one, if we go ahead and look at this repository, in the same way that we found with the paste image extension that I'm borrowing code from, it's under MIT as well. So I can use the contents of this extension for helping me for uploading the file into Azure Storage. So I haven't dug into the code in this extension yet to figure out at what points I need it to be, but I'm imagining that in here there are some blob containers. In here there are some code that I can use to send that file up to Azure Blob Storage and then get the URL back. So probably before the next stream, which is on Monday, I'll dig into this extension, figure out which parts of it are needed for what I want to do, and then we can look at taking the output of the first part of the extension, which is grabbing the clipboard contents and saving it to a file, and see how I can take that and move it up to Azure as well. So what I'm envisioning is that one of two things. Either, or there might be a third one depending on how it's actually implemented. I'm going to need to put my credentials somewhere. So I'm going to need to have either a SAS token or some sort of credentials stored that will allow the extension to then upload into my Azure Blob Storage account. So that can be done at the machine level in the configuration of Visual Studio Code, or potentially it could be in an environment variable, or potentially it could be some other mechanism that I don't know about yet. So I'm going to need to figure out how I can store those credentials ready for usage when it comes around to doing the upload, be able to pull them out and send them up with the request so that it actually stores that in the right place. So that's all the things I need to figure out. So this lunchtime session of me streaming wasn't a particularly good success. We've successfully broken our AppVeyor build. I'm going to need to go and contact Fyodor and Ilya and ask the question as to why that's failing, if they've got any ideas. But hopefully that will sort itself out. But hold on, I've just had a thought. So earlier today, this morning, before I started work, I did a merge of the same pull request from Dependabot on this other extension. So in here, I did this same one. So this was the bump of 11.9.5 to 11.9.6, which is the pull request that I did over here as well. And both extensions are using the same cake.vscode recipe file. They're both building an app there, and one worked, and the other one isn't, but it's the exact same code running on the exact same build infrastructure. So that tells me that this is some sort of transient error, right? Would everyone come to the same conclusion? Because for the same extension, I mean, we could test that. We could test that hypothesis. Let's go over here and let's go to this chocolate VSCode extension, and then let's rebuild this commit. This is danger. If this one now fails, then it can only be a transient error. Are you sure, Kim? Are you sure? Oh, look at that. Interesting. Let's see if it at least attempts it. Let's wait for it to get to the npm install step and see if in the log it's attempting to download that file. Now that raises the question of, should I add the caching of the node modules into the other? I don't see any reason why I wouldn't do that. But let's see what the output is when it gets to this step. And then at that point, I'm then stopping the stream because I need to go back and do some work. Oh, and look at that. Look at that. It failed. It failed. So it's some transient. It can only be some transient error because this build was working earlier today without any problems. So I'm going to blame someone else. This is not my fault. So this is either GitHub, because that's where it's pulling the file from, or it's avail, or something else. But either way, but did it clear it? Node modules invalidated because the dependencies package.json have changed. Okay, but regardless of that, or a proxy on avail could be. The lot. So bottom line is, where I want to end this is, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. This broken build has nothing to do with me. So on that note, I'm going to call this quits. Hopefully this was useful. Hopefully this time suits some people, and we can continue. The intention is that every Friday going forward, I will be doing a lunchtime something. So in this scenario, I was trying to fix a broken build. It could be something else another day. But the idea is that off a lunchtime, I'll be doing some stuff in addition to my Monday night stream, which is a longer session where we're doing digging into more stuff that we've got time for. Whereas this one will be much more constrained into what we're trying to achieve, but hopefully it will. Indeed, let's go with that. Every Friday going forward, we will break the build on somewhere. Yes, I think that'll be the new title of the stream, I think. Let's break the build again. Okay, but anyway, for now, I'm going to stop. Thank you all for coming along and chatting to me today at my lunch hour. I'll talk to you all later. Thank you very much.